Hi, guys. How are you? I have a really interesting guest today that I'm excited to share with you. We all have a desire to have healing and growth and overcome our trauma. But what we have found, and I have seen over and over again in my years of experience is that, there's healing, but then there's this reoccurrence of similar triggers and emotional experiences. And Lion Goodman is a man who has created an approach that he is able to clear trauma and the effects of trauma, in one shot. So I am really all about hearing this. So let me tell you a little bit about him. At the age of 26 years old, Lion was shot in the head 4 times. This near-death experience kick-started his 5 decades of research into the nature of consciousness, developmental psychology, spirituality, and healing. He created the clear beliefs method of trauma-informed therapeutic coaching, which he has taught to more than 500 coaches, healers, and therapists around the world. His training is accredited by both the International Coaching Federation and the Association for Coaching. In a single session, Lion can eliminate a client's limiting or negative belief from their subconscious mind, heal a childhood wound, or resolve a trauma from the past. The Clear Beliefs Method is a multidimensional approach to rapid healing and deep healing. Lion has taught workshops and trainings around the world and authored 5 books, including Creating on Purpose, Clear Your Clients, Limiting Beliefs, and Menlightenment. He is co-author of a new book, Transforming Trauma, with Joe Vitale, Marcy Shimoff, John DeMartini, and Christy Whitman. So without any further ado, let's bring him in and learn a whole bunch of stuff. I'm really excited. I think this guy is going to be a really dynamic experience for us all. Hey, guys, it is Allison from Allison Answers and Lager Counseling Services. As you know from the bio, I have Lion Goodman here. And I have a question before we even start. Lion, is that your real name?
It is my real name. It's not the name my parents gave me. They gave me an assumed name. They assumed I would like it when I grew up, and I didn't. So I changed it.
You know what? That showcases kind of who you are, doesn't it? It's like almost like based in like this kind of, you moved away from what they believed about who you were, right?
Exactly,
which is so
exactly.
cool.
Yeah.
And what was it about Lion that drew you to
Well,
that name?
that name actually came to me. I was studying with a man who's had a school in the mountains of Colorado called the Adventure Trails Survival School and Brain Laboratory. He was an amazing guy who had 3 degrees from the University of Chicago, had been a entertainer, and he had his own enlightenment experience. And so he had a program for consciousness expansion. And I met him when I was 19. And one of the programs was that you would take on a medicine name, as the Native Americans did when they went through a initiation process. Yeah. And so that was my assignment: go figure out what your medicine name was. Well, I didn't know anything about medicine names. I was a kid from Denver, so I was like,
okay,
medicine name, I don't know anything about medicine. So I'm walking around this beautiful property, 250 acres of pine and aspen forest, and I'm thinking about what's my medicine name. I hear Lion. And I went, lion? I don't know anything about lions. They're in the zoo. It's like, that's the only contact I have with lions. And I thought, well, like, I'm certainly not lion yet. I've got dormant potential. Yeah. So I called myself Sleeping Lion. That was my medicine. And over time working with him, I became Waking Lion, and then Lion on the Prowl, and then finally just Lion. And I grew into it, and I became a student of his and began helping him teach his summer course called Brain in Nature course.
You see, I am so glad I asked that question, because that is beautiful. That, I feel like as people hear today, it kind of mimics that the work that you do. It's really incredible. And I have to I'll put a little, side note in, because I think it's so funny with my kids. One of the things I was like, let's give everybody an Indian name. And I'm like, okay. And my son, I called him Runs with Self. just, just like, because he ran like little babies, they like run everywhere. I'm like, are we in a rush? Like, it's just so cute. But anyhow, so I
Very
love
cute.
that. And I want to like read a couple of things just in regard to things that you actually said, because I think they're so profound. So, and I want the audience to hear these words, because your use of language is very powerful, and I believe in language. So, um, I'm gonna read what you had said somewhere
Good.
to
I
the
can't wait to find out what I said.
Yes, I know you probably don't remember it, right? But it's really beautiful. It says, my methods work by diving down into the causal matrix of the mind, in the subconscious, where our beliefs create our reality. When you change your beliefs at the core, your reality changes. You can feel it immediately, and it's permanent. So, what I want to say to the audience or anyone listening is that I want just to frame it for you to consider your beliefs as Lion is sharing his genius. Like, consider what in your life really isn't working and what you want deleted. Because I'm going to say another thing that he says that is so cool. I love it. I'm sorry. It's so good. I'm like, I'm like your biggest fan right now. So it says he deletes the stuff that gets in the way. Like, that is it. There's so many things that are blocking like the stream of well-being that we all have an opportunity to be in. So, okay. So I just have to say that I want everybody to kind of be prepared to hear you and to be thinking about their own belief systems and what they want to change in their life. So now, Lion, before we do any of that, I'm going to ask you, would you mind telling us about your near-death experience and how that brought you to the work that you're doing?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
So I told you that I met this teacher at 19 and studied with him, became an assistant teacher in a school. And he encouraged me to create my own degree program at the University of Colorado, which is where I was studying. And so I created a degree program in consciousness studies. This was way, way back in the old days of 1975. So
Wow.
I've been on this topic for a long time. And so I graduated with a degree in consciousness studies, but nobody was hiring people with consciousness studies degrees because there wasn't any. I was the first.
Nobody was conscious.
Right.
Okay, so
So I couldn't find a job. So I went on the road as a traveling salesman, selling jewelry and gift items to stores. And I did that for about a year and a half just because I needed money and I wanted to sort of take a hippie vacation in my big van. And after about a year and a half, I was really dissatisfied with my life. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what to do next. I thought maybe I'd go back to school and get a PhD, or maybe even go back to medical school, which was the original idea. Um, and so I was just kind of farting around, I would say, as a
love that.
salesman.
Yeah.
Um, and one day I was driving from Las Vegas to LA, through the Mojave Desert, and the fellow had stopped. Had his car was stopped, and his hood was up. It was about 110 degrees out, and I was a good Samaritan, so I'd always stop and help people if I could. And so I stopped and I said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "Oh, I just put $200 into it, and it won't start, and I don't know what to do." And I said, "Well, I'm heading into LA. Do you want to ride?" And he looked at me kind of funny and he said, "Yeah, okay." And he took his duffel bags and boxes and stuff and suitcases and put them in my van. It was like an RV van. And we drove, and over 3 days he drove with me, and I grew to trust him, and I'd send him on errands, gas up the car, clean the car, that kind of thing. Um, and then at night we'd camp out somewhere. We were camped out in the middle of nowhere, east of LA. And I was in the back of the van moving things around because it was very crowded. And so I was crouched down in between cabinets, moving things around in cabinets. He was in the front of the van listening to music. And suddenly there was an explosion and something hit me in the head. And at first I thought the gas stove had exploded for some reason. I looked up and the gas stove was intact. And then I looked to my left, and there he was with a gun pointed at my head from the front seat. And I realized he had shot me. And I was shocked, obviously, and surprised. I came out of nowhere, and so I said, "Are you shooting at me?" I mean, it was just like so out of reality, right? And he said, "Shut up, man, just shut up." And he shot again. And the second bullet missed me. So I thought, okay, well, he's not warning me. He's going to kill me. And then he shot a third time. And at that point, I went, okay, I'm going to die. This is my day to die. I'm 26 years old. I've been tripping around. I don't want to die with anger in my heart, or, I want to die with peace. So I began connecting with God, and I thought, well, I want to forgive everyone in my past. So I kind of went through the past and forgave everyone that I had had hurt me, and I asked for forgiveness of everyone I had hurt. It's kind of like a fast reverse movie reel. Um, and then I began leaving my body, and I was sort of looking down at the van at this little scene of sort of like looking at a dollhouse and going, "Oh, that's interesting." It was like, okay, I was at peace. There was love and light flowing through me, and he was included in it. It was like it was all good, and then he shot the fourth time, and my head was thrown violently to the right, and blood was dripping down all over the place. And uh, I thought, I'm back in my body. I'm supposed to be out of my body. And I had studied anatomy and physiology, and so I thought, where'd the bullet go? I thought it had kind of gone through here, but I felt intact. I was kind of checking my body and my mind, and everything felt like nothing was missing. So at that point, I thought, well, I mean, obviously, I was hurt. It was like being hit over the head with a baseball bat, um, and uh, and I thought, well, if I'm going to die, I at least want to look my assassin in the eyes, because I was perpendicular to him. And so I turned my head and I looked at him, and he freaked out. He jumped up and he said, "Why aren't you dead, man? You're supposed to be dead." And I didn't have a good answer for that. So I just said, "Here I
I'm
am."
sorry.
Sorry to disappoint you.
I didn't meet your expectations.
Exactly. And so I just said, here I am. And he said, "That's too weird, man. It's too weird. It's just like my dream this morning." And I said, "What dream?" And he said, "I dreamt I was shooting at this guy and he wouldn't die, but it wasn't you. It was somebody else in the dream." Now, at this point, I went, okay, this is weird. Who's writing the script?
Yeah.
Why don't I remember signing the contract that I would play a part in this, in this movie? It's like,
Yes.
wow, this is very strange. But I thought, okay, well, if I can quiet him down, maybe he won't shoot me again. And so I spoke to him very slowly, and he kept coming up and going, "I shot you, man. I shot you 4 times in the head. Why aren't you dead? Why aren't you dead?" And I just said, maybe I'm not supposed to be dead. And I just tried to very quietly calm him down, because I thought that's what's needed right now if I want to live. And there was a lot of blood, but again, I felt intact. And so at one point in this scenario, he said, he came over and he looked at my head and he said, "Does it hurt?" And I realized, okay, well, he's now caring. There's care here. It's not anger, right? And so I said, "Yeah, but I think I'm going to be okay." And he said, "Okay, I'm going to take you to a hospital I know." And I said, "Okay, that sounded like a good idea." Like, so he got in the driver's seat. He put some stuff around me so I couldn't jump him or something. I wasn't about to do that. And he started driving, and so I had I have no idea how much time, because I was completely out of time. I was still in this glowing love light state, kind of golden honey love flowing through me, and I was at peace, and just trying to figure out, for however long he drove, what the hell is going on here, because I had no idea.
Yes.
And eventually he stopped driving, and he turned off the engine. I knew we weren't near a hospital because there were no bright lights. And so there was quiet for a couple of minutes. Then he walked back with a gun in his hand and sat down next to me. And he said, I can't take you to the hospital, man. I have to kill you." And I said, "Oh, why is that?" It's always good to be curious, why is that? And he said, I can't take you to the hospital because they'll put me back in jail. I can't go back to jail, man." And I realized, oh, it's not just a crazy person with a gun, it's a crazy ex-con with a gun. You know? So I kind of elevated the issue, right? But I just kept really calm, and I kept, I just said, well, maybe we don't have to go to the hospital, maybe we can figure it out. Anyway, that started an 8-hour conversation. And I got him to tell me about his life story. At one point, I said, I'm really crouched in this position, I'd like to get up, and he let me out of the van and pointed down to a pond. And we walked down to the pond. I kind of washed off the blood. The blood had stopped leaking at this point. And after I did that, I stood up and turned to him, and he kind of held out the gun, and he said, what would you do if I handed you this gun? And I said, I'd throw it out into the water. And he said, you wouldn't shoot me? You wouldn't try to kill me? And I said, no, I have my life, you have yours, we're okay. And he looked at me really strangely, and he said, man, you are the weirdest person I've ever met. And I knew I was probably the weirdest person he would ever meet.
Yes.
More conversation. Finally, we agreed that I would let him go and he would let me go. I would not turn him in, and he would never do anything like that again. That was our agreement. We shook hands. He drove to a place that he knew, got out of the car. I gave him some money and jewelry that I had that I thought could help him. And I drove myself to the hospital. And the surgeon, the emergency doc said, what happened? I told him. He said, well, you're a lucky man. 2 bullets bounced off your skull. And I knew I wasn't lucky. I was blessed. So
Yes, you are.
that started my life over again. And it's great to be reborn without having to go through the nasty diaper stage.
Yes. You know what? I got to tell you something. That is incredible. I've had just that when you said that love honey experience, like I've had that, but not with near death.
Yeah.
It's just incredible, like supernatural experience. I've heard different people go through that. But so how did that I mean, I can hear how it would transform you, but could you explain it to us how it's so cool because it was used to create you now. It's just incredible. So could you tell us more? I was crying. I mean, it's just so moving.
Well,
You didn't turn him in, right?
no, I kept my agreement, and I think he
Mhm.
kept his. Yeah. So
Have you ever heard anything about him again or
no,
anything? Mm,
no.
okay.
But this
Mhm.
story's been published many, many times in many ways. A movie was made based on the story. Um,
Yes.
and
How can we find that movie? I want to see
um,
it.
yeah, if you go to my website, liongoodman.com,
Mhm.
and you go to articles, you'll find Lion's near-death experience. And then if you read all the way down to the bottom, there's a link to the movie.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to
Yeah,
watch it. Yeah.
yeah.
That's so cool. Yes.
So it took me about a month to kind of get myself back together, start looking for a job, and I got a job as a headhunter, which is kind of strange after
I'm
having
sorry.
been headhunted.
No pun intended. Like
Life is ironic, you know.
it's
Um,
yeah.
so that began a 25-year career in headhunting, right? And what's interesting is that sometimes people who are very grounded, when they have a near-death experience, they become spiritual.
Yeah.
Well, I was already spiritual. So
Yeah.
this incident actually got me grounded. I don't know why that is, some
Yeah.
kind of balance in the universe.
Yeah.
I got my feet on the ground. I started making money. I met my soon-to-be wife, got married, had a kid. So I built a career on that, and I was probably way more successful than I would have been in any other career.
Yeah.
And so what I realized, what I learned, and what was clear was that compassion and love are stronger than violence.
Yes.
And it's not always appropriate to be compassionate. Sometimes it's appropriate to be violent to someone who's being violent, but compassion goes a long way. Love
It
goes a long way.
does.
Care and curiosity go a long way to heal the soul. And he was a wounded soul. He was wounded by an alcoholic father, and being beaten, and being told he was stupid, and dropping out of school, and getting into drugs and drug dealing. I mean, so his story led him to certain beliefs about how he should live his life, which was criminality. My beliefs led me to my situation of being kind of a lost salesman and then a headhunter, right? So our beliefs lead us to wherever we're going to end up.
Yeah.
So that got me more interested in consciousness and beliefs, and that began a 25-year exploration of everything I could learn about beliefs, spirituality, consciousness, psychology. While I was headhunting by day, I was doing shamanic practices at night, and
Love it. Yeah.
yeah.
And you know what? He was possibly your first client.
Oh, that's an interesting thing. Nobody's ever said that before.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like.
I was certainly counseling him. Yeah,
Yes. Like
from a
you,
very
and you,
compassionate
yeah.
place. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sweet. Said that.
Yeah. It's really the story is really sweet. I'm yeah, I'm really moved by it. I feel like crying. I'm like gonna start like really. You got a tissue, Lion? Over there? I'm just kidding. Okay. So then what just everything I read about you, that you became like the belief therapist. I love the things about you on here that it says, I take a very practical approach. I explore all methods that release people from past limitations and end suffering and synthesize the ones that are most effective. And this like encapsulates, I feel like, that what you just did with, not just did, what you did with that man. I want you and everyone to experience a life of freedom and joy so you can express your magnificence fully and live a life based on your virtuous true self. This is my path to create a better world for everyone. And like, I feel like I could, I feel the same way. Like, I want to do that. But anyhow, so like, I feel like that was like, that's what you did with him.
It's true. It's
You
true.
like changed the trajectory,
Exactly.
like in 8 hours a
I can do it
day.
for
Oh my
now.
God, this is like what you do. But you just like cleaned it up a bit,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So can you tell us what you do? Tell us about it.
Yes. Um, so after really 45 years of study and practice of many, many different disciplines, um, I knew that certain things created big, permanent, profound transformation, and most things didn't. Most things produced, most technologies and processes and methods produced temporary results or
Yes.
partial results.
Yes.
You do affirmations, you feel good for a few minutes or maybe an hour. You do
About 90
therapy,
minutes.
you feel good for the next hour, and then you have to come back again and again and again and again to try to sort it out. You take psychedelics and you have a big wow experience, and then 3 days later you're back to your normal pissy self.
Yes.
So
Yes.
um, but having done so many different things to try to sort this out, I saw a pattern. I said, okay, there's certain things that happen that create big shifts. And those big shifts turned out, what I found was that they all had a big belief change at the core of them. There was a core belief that shifted. I think one of my first ones was in therapy when I was a young man. I suddenly realized it's not my mother's fault. That
Yes.
was a belief change, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that belief change shifted my relationship with myself, with my mother, with women. So I started studying beliefs themselves. What are they? Where do they come from? How do they function? And I tried lots of different belief change methods. And again, most of them produced only partial or temporary results.
Yes.
But some had a very big, profound impact. So I said, well, what do they have in common? I have this kind of scientific mind of trying to figure it out. And I realized that what they had in common was that there was a core belief shift, and that shift was multidimensional.
Yes.
Most belief change methods think of beliefs as mental constructs.
Mm.
I believe in Santa Claus, or I don't believe in Santa Claus, right? That's a mental
Yes.
construct. It's
Right.
verbal. It has words to it.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that had a big impact were multidimensional. They impacted every part of me: mental, physical, intellectual, emotional, energetic, uh, relational, right? It's like
Yes.
all of the dimensions that we have as human beings. It was a multidimensional shifts, and that the technologies that worked were those that were multidimensional.
Mm.
And so that was my big breakthrough, is realizing that we are multidimensional beings having multidimensional experiences, and our beliefs are made of our experience. That's how we come to them, whether we're indoctrinated or we come to a conclusion. And so our beliefs must be multidimensional. And that's why most methods don't work very well, is because they're unidimensional, maybe two-dimensional. You can beat on a pillow and clear your emotional self, or you can change your mind and change your mental self, or you can remember that you're one and change your spiritual self for that moment. But unless you clear it all out at once, it will keep coming back and back and back.
Yeah.
So I took all the methods that I knew and one that downloaded into me and put them together into a program that I could not only work with my clients, but also teach to others, because I'm also very practical of mind. And so I have a program called the Clear Beliefs Coach Training, which teaches other coaches, therapists, and healers how to do this work. And I've got 600 graduates around the world.
I love that. Yes. So, I mean, I don't want to like have you like give the program away, but could you give us like some tips and tricks? Like what makes it, because basically I've had that experience that you're describing where there suddenly out of nowhere, it's not out of nowhere, I shouldn't say that. Like let's say my whole life, something felt insecure in my foundation. And then now all of a sudden I just notice it's secure. It's gone. Right. So and one of the things, and this is not to like, ring our bell or like to pat myself on the back, but I own counseling centers, right? So I'm a therapist. I got you crack about the hour, and I'm just kidding. They just keep coming back. You guys can't do anything with them. No, but I honestly, I agree with
good
you.
for making money.
No.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding. No, it's okay. I actually agree with you. I agree with you. And that's why I believe that we're aligned to be together today, right now, because what I've been trying to teach therapists is that something very similar, that, usually people go into like counseling centers, and what happens is that they work on the symptoms, going away, all different ways for that to happen. And then that's it. So we are like more into like, how can we make people get to their greatest, highest level in life, like their highest self, their greatness. When insurance companies say no, their symptoms are gone. Like, to me, that's just step zero.
Right.
Like, but anyhow, I really want to know like how, like, because like EMDR does, stuff like that. So I'm thinking you probably combine some of that, and, and I know that core beliefs are in charge.
Yes.
They're running this shit show, right?
Yes.
So let me ask you this. All right. And I'm going to stop talking because I really want to hear you. But this is what I want to ask you, because I've been working on this like my whole life, like since I'm a kid. So spiritually, mentally, physically, and I've had a lot of different, tragedies, traumas that I've worked through. And I've really changed so much of my core beliefs. Right. And I see the difference. And I spend time creating the life that I want and being aligned with that. And I watch, it's like in real time, I watch like my life show up this way or this way. I'm like, wow, that's fast now. Like you could just see it happening. But I have certain things that out of nowhere, like it was even this morning, like, oh my God, like my life is a mess, like whatever. And then I have to like work myself out of it, and how when you return in those patterns, right? So I think like, oh, I'm like great at this, but I'm like, what do you do with people who are really like doing that? Like they're like, I really believe I'm creating, I've watched it. Like I see how much I've gotten to, but I'm not like, I keep returning to these like, and I know it's a belief.
Well, first of all, we are pattern-based beings. The brain is set up for patterns. And it even in the womb, a baby, as the mind is developing, it's looking for patterns. A baby in the womb can tell the difference between the mother's voice and another woman's voice who's similar. So the baby's identifying patterns and then using those patterns to survive. That's the core of the belief structure. And so when the baby comes out and it's in the swirl of sensory information, right? Nothing makes sense, but there's certain patterns. This face comes close and I feel comfortable and warm. That face comes close and I feel cold and prickly. These are patterns that an infant is identifying. And then eventually we get language, and then language comes in and starts putting patterns on things. That's a cat. Oh, it's no longer an incredible being that's alive and has its own experience. It's now just a name. And so we drop away all of that incredible open experience by using language, and then language kind of dulls our experience. That's just one aspect of the pattern system.
Oh, I
So
love that.
yeah, so the beliefs are the patterns that we grab onto and say, this is what will ensure my survival, right? So a baby who's crying in the crib cries and cries and cries, nobody comes, cries and cries, nobody comes, stops crying and somebody comes. That baby figures out, if I'm quiet and I don't say anything or don't express myself, I'll be taken care of. Another baby cries, someone's there. That baby concludes, oh, if I cry and make a fuss, I'll be taken care of. Now, that's a really good belief for a baby. The baby's figured it out. That belief is not so great in an adult. And you and I probably know people who are still using that method for,
Just
for getting
yesterday.
attention.
Just actually, yes.
Yes. So this is the layers and layers and layers of patterns, identifications, conclusions, and figuring it out. How do I survive in life? And then we've got the biological patterns involved, the social patterns, cultural patterns, and the information that comes into us as children, where we're trying to put together, how do I survive this family? And then children can't blame their parents, because their parents are God and goddess that created them.
Yeah.
And if I question them or blame them, they might throw me out to the wolves. So it must be my fault. So
Yeah.
all children come to these conclusions about, it's my fault that I'm getting beaten. I
Mhm.
must be a terrible person. And this is where some of the deepest identity beliefs, the beliefs about who I am, come from, is the deficits in the environment as a child that then get turned into self knowledge, right? The truisms that make me and how I get along in life. So now we move all the way forward to adults. We have tens of thousands of beliefs that we've accumulated in our lives. And a lot of them are still the same ones we used when we were kids. And so they keep repeating over and over again, no matter how smart you get or how many therapy sessions you have or how many drugs you do, these patterns are still the basis upon which you're living. And so my work is to go down into the subconscious mind where the pattern originated and to change it there. Because when you change it there, everything else changes. It ripples out into our perceptions, our choices, our life, how we are in the world. So that's my work, is very deep pattern disruption and pattern change in the subconscious mind, which I call beliefs. Other people call them paradigms or schemas or frames of reference. There's lots of names for for the thing I focus on, but it's
Yeah.
basically that deep pattern system.
W- I've done a lot of like meditation work, like with Dr. Joe Dispenza, or just like on these, advanced retreats and stuff. And that was where I feel like a lot of transformation happened. Is it similar to that? Or is it like when you like, do you mind me asking, or am I giving away your secret to
I
like
don't,
how you go
I don't
into the subconscious mind? Like, how do you do that? Is it through meditation? Similar?
First of all, the clear beliefs method has a dozen different methodologies that
Yeah.
all get mixed and used, different tools. It's like a carpenter with a tool belt. He's got
Love
all those
that.
different tools
Yeah.
and can use it to fix whatever's broken, right? So it's not just one thing, but there's certain things we do use. For example, a lot of people know about IFS. I was trained in voice dialogue by Helen Sidra Stone. So part of it is a voice dialogue process. Part of it is deep visualization,
Yes.
going and what's now called memory reconsolidation, going back into time and into the originating experience and changing the experience. We have a process, for example, called rescuing the inner child, in which the adult goes back and actually changes what happened in childhood, so that the child is no longer freaked out, because that child self gets stuck in that traumatic experience. And
Yes.
by going in and changing the child's experience, that child now has a different experience of what happened. So we can actually go back and change memories. I'll give you a great example. I was working with this multimillionaire who he was the reason he was a multimillionaire is because he made millions, then he lost millions, and he made millions, he lost millions,
Yes.
and he was tired of the pattern. I call myself a subconscious pattern detective.
Yes. I love that.
And so uh, as we were working, I was taking him back in time to try to find the source of this pattern, what was underneath it, right? And suddenly he remembered being 3 years old, walking on the streets of New York with his mother, hand in hand, and he saw a shiny penny on the ground. And he got very excited and he reached down for the penny, and his mother jerked him back and said, "Don't touch that, it's dirty."
Ah,
And he suddenly realized that the reason he couldn't hold on to his money was because it was dirty and he shouldn't touch it.
oh, it's incredible, isn't
Now,
it?
that's the kind of thing that I do is I take whatever's the surface issue and I
Mhm.
go down deep into the causal matrix where
Yes.
things are caused at the belief level. And once we cleared that, he didn't have to lose his money anymore. And this is fairly routine in my work is that in one session in 10 or 20 or 30 minutes, we can clear a pattern like that at its core.
I'll tell you something. I feel like a little happy because I feel like I'm somewhat on track. Not as genius as you clearly, but I uh we do that with people and we take them back to the moment, whatever that is. And one of the things like they'll go back as the adult, right? In a visualization, but then they'll be telling me what they're seeing and then making the transformation at that time back in time, right? But I was doing that with people, but then what I noticed is that people were saying like, I'm just different. And I was like, wow, this shit works. Like, oh my God, like I stumbled upon something, right? And that is just the coolest thing. I just want to say another thing I'm curious about because I suffered with an eating disorder from, when I was really young. I was hospitalized from an eating disorder and I never, ever, ever thought I would get better, ever. And one of the things that I learned in that process, and this idea keeps coming to me now. It's not related to the eating disorder, but that we will look at problems, situations in a linear perspective. And I try to tell like my team here, like there's many, many answers like to one thing. And I feel like it's almost like aligned kind of with what you're saying. Because when people will come here for an eating disorder and like the therapist will try to like help them, I'm like, it's multifaceted. It's spiritual. That's what's cool about an eating disorder is you get so thoroughly healed because it touches everything, right? But is that along the lines of what you're saying? Is that similar or?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
The main difference between what I do and what most therapists do, not what you're
Yeah,
doing. You're
it's
of
okay.
mind with what I'm up to. Is most technologies are outside in. Okay, this is your
Yes.
problem. Let's change your mind, or let's change your behavior, or let's change how you're thinking about it, or let's change what your habit pattern is. And it has some impact, but it's not permanent because you're battling the old belief. So if I have an old belief saying I'm a piece of crap, then I can come in with, oh, look how good I am. But it's now creating resistance between that and I'm a piece of crap. And so it's like a garden. If you wanted to build a garden, the first thing you do is you clear the rocks and weeds
Yes.
from the soil, and then you can plant your seeds. You wouldn't throw your good seeds on rocky, weedy ground,
Yes.
and that's what a lot of outside in technologies do.
Yes.
And so nothing much is going to grow. But if you clear the old belief first
Hmm.
out of the psyche completely, then a new belief can come in and take root and flower and blossom and fruit. And that's another fundamental part of what we do is we always go to the source first, and then we bring in a positive replacement.
Yes.
So otherwise, you're just doing this outside in. Oh, do 10 push-ups when you get up in the morning and you'll be better. That's and outside in is good for sports coaching, for example. Just turn your wrist a little bit more and you'll get more loft on the ball, right? Outside in is very helpful when you have a mentor. but it's not helpful in the deep psyche.
That's been one of our biggest challenges here, like growing counseling centers, and we want to be different, right? So when we're hiring people and training people, I'm always trying to have them have the client have an internal, focus, internal locus of control, as opposed to this, here's a worksheet, or you didn't change your behavior this week. I want to literally wring their necks, and they're probably listening, but they know that I feel that way. It's like, where you're like tinkering outside for an internal problem. And it's just, yeah. So you train, I like want you to train my staff, because they
I'd
won't
be
listen to
delighted.
me.
I would be
They will
delighted.
not listen to me. No, maybe they will, but I think you have to almost, like, in order to know this stuff, don't you feel like you have to almost experience it? Like, to really, do you think?
Well, in my training, people not just practice the technique, but it's practiced on them by another student,
Yes.
so they can actually experience it from the inside, because otherwise it's just theory.
Yeah.
So everything is experienced directly in my training, because that you have to, unless you find out that it actually works for you, then
Yes.
then you can't even imagine what it could do for other people.
Yeah, because it really is, it almost feels like magic. Like, wow, how did that happen?
Mhm.
You know?
That's Yeah, it's often, people often say, my God, this is like a magical wand that gives me a power that I've never had before to help people, because it is profound, it is permanent, it is those shifts that many people have from time to time. We've just routinized it and said, here's a way to get it every time. I once asked a very wonderful psychotherapist who had also a large group of centers. I said, how often do you get profound transformation in your sessions? And she said, well, I'm pretty good. I get about one every 25 or 30 sessions. And then she said, how often do you get profound transformation? I said,
Every
every
time.
time. She went, really?
Yes.
So, yeah. And
Yes. Because
she was
don't you
using one of
think?
the more advanced techniques for transformation. She was
Yeah.
using memory reconsolidation and coherence therapy. So I've had people who've done many different kinds of trainings come to me and say, "Oh my God, this integrates everything I've learned, and it
Yes.
takes me the next couple of steps." And look, I don't know why I was chosen to download this stuff or figure it out, but I'm just happy to be me. And I'm happy
Yes.
to share it. Yeah.
You know what? And maybe because you were the dude who could get shot 4 times and still be kind and nice. Maybe that's why,
Yeah.
right? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really incredible that, what you're doing here. So, like, in your like, there was this thing that you said in the questions, and I actually don't ever take those questions from Podmatch, but I thought it was such a good question, where you said that you'd try this, like, thing with the audience, with the listeners. So do you, should I look up what the name of it is? I have it
No, no,
here,
no,
but
no, that's
you know
fine.
what it is. I just think it would be cool.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So, mhm,
This is one of my favorite ways of showing how beliefs create our experiences,
mhm.
right? So I invite you and the listening audience to close your eyes.
All right, I'm gonna close my eyes now.
Yeah, close your eyes.
All right.
You would.
Don't leave
And
or anything.
you're okay.
Okay, that would be really weird. It'd
That
actually
would
be
be weird.
funny, but okay.
Okay. And so I'm going to invite you to try on a belief like you would try on an outfit of clothing at a clothing store, right? You try it on to see how it feels, makes you feel, right? And so you can do the same thing with beliefs. So feel what it feels like to hold the belief, there's something wrong with me. And again, I invite everybody to do this. Feel what it feels like in your body. It may shift your posture. It may shift a weight, or it might be heat or vibration, whatever it is. Allison, tell me what you're experiencing.
I think I almost felt like it was like heaviness on my shoulders, almost like I was putting on this cloak, like, and I'm not unfamiliar with that feeling. So, it goes in between, like, I'm, egomaniac with an inferiority complex thing there.
Okay, good. So it was a weight on your shoulders. That's
Yeah.
very typical. Some people have a kind of curling forward, a
Yeah, I
heavy down
felt that.
chest. Yeah,
Mhm.
sometimes a jaw tightening. So there's all kinds of body sensation, but everybody experiences it in some way. Okay.
Yeah.
So now take that clothing off, take that cloak off and toss it to the side. You don't need it anymore. And now try on a different belief. Feel what it feels like to hold the belief, I am a sacred and worthy being. And how does that feel on you as a
So
belief?
damn good.
Yeah.
You know what it felt like? I could feel, I don't know if my body moved, but I could feel my face go up to the sky. Like, I can feel that happen when I have those. It's like you're almost open to like the whole sky. It felt
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And that's also typical. Most people have a wake in sort of a lightening up or a spaciousness.
Yeah.
So this shows that our beliefs create our feelings. And
Yeah.
sometimes we're aware of them and sometimes we're not. Most often they're like a kind of itch in the background that we can't scratch. And so you can do it the reverse way. You can feel a feeling and then ask, what belief are you? I'll give you an example. I walked into a party once and I knew it was going to be a good party. A lot of my friends would be there. And as soon as I walked in the door, I felt weird. It's like I
Yeah.
couldn't even describe it. It's like my whole body was vibrating and I wanted to like get out, go out the door immediately. And I knew something had gotten triggered. I didn't know what it was, but clearly I was like, you know.
Yeah.
And so I sat down, I closed my eyes, I felt the feeling fully, which is the first step.
Mm-hmm.
Feel the feeling fully without resistance, just really experience it. And then I asked, what belief are you?
Mm-hmm.
And immediately I heard, I don't belong here.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
went, oh, that old belief. Now I had
Yeah.
cleared it in the past, but something had triggered it. Maybe it was a smell, maybe it was somebody's hand movement, maybe it was a particular person. I didn't know what, but all I wanted to do was clear it. So I used my technology. I did this process, cleared it out of my system, like taking off an outfit and changed my outfit, put on I belong here. And I stood up, opened my eyes, and it was a completely different party. People looked friendly and warm, and they were
Yes.
emotionally over. Hey, Lion, come on over. We want to talk. And that took 20 seconds.
So when
So
is it what you did with us? Is that what you did when you were outside? Like
it's
you,
it's the beginning. It's the beginning of the process that I
yeah,
teach. Called
yeah.
body wisdom, and
Oh, body
basically,
wisdom.
but anyone can use this. You when you feel weird and you don't know what it is,
Mhm.
just sit down, be quiet, feel the feeling without labeling it or judging it. Just feel it. This is
Mhm.
felt sense that we teach throughout our whole program. And then ask the question, what belief are you? And you will get some kind of answer. It might come in words, might come in pictures, might come in memories, but you'll get some answer. And then, you can use any technology to clear it and then replace it. But that's a very helpful technique
Yeah, that's,
that I teach.
it's interesting. I love that. And it's kind of like that going inward. I'm not going to tell a story that's going to take too much time because I want to hear from you. But what I notice is that I keep returning to a feeling, right? That I feel overwhelmed and I will never get everything done that I need to get done, right? And if I ask myself, it's like the belief is almost like it's a chaotic world. And like it's like if things are not in order, like I'm not safe, that kind of feeling,
Oh, that's very core, very core. Yep.
Yeah. And I pretty much know that I grew up in a home that was like it was not organized, like it was like chaotic and it was messy. And I'm really neat. I love order. So I always was like cleaning and trying to like get ahead, even very little, all the time. So like what would you do with someone like me? Or I think a lot of people have that overwhelm, you know?
No, it's only you.
Are you kidding or you're serious?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay. The problems of this world are only me, Lion. This is my belief. Okay. I'm kidding. All right.
So what I would do is I'd take you right back to that time when you
Mhm.
were in that house and things were chaotic. And I assume they were chaotic emotionally as well. Because
Yeah. And if
Yeah.
things were not organized, somehow my mother would be mad, but she was the one that was chaotic.
Bingo. Okay. So
Yeah.
I would take you right back to that experience, to the earliest moment you can remember, because
Mm,
at some point, based on your mother's reactions, the house, what the difference between the ordered house and the disordered house, with your mother's feelings, with how she treated you, with how she responded, we'd go right into that matrix
yeah.
and and do one of the techniques. I'm not sure which one I would use, but it might be rescue the inner child, of getting the
Mm.
kid out and explaining to her what's happening.
Oh, that's interesting.
It,
Yeah.
it might it might be changing what happened, shifting the environment, but using the imagination, the imaginal realm, we call it. We would go in and change what happened, change the conclusion you came to, or the circumstances that you came to them in, and shift it at that level, because you gave me enough clues that I could, take you right there
Yes.
in a matter of
Right.
minutes.
You mentioned the imaginal realm, and that was a question that I did have for you. I wanted to, could you explain that to the listeners, what that is?
Sure. That's a word we use. It's an old word, but it's a word we use
Mhm.
to describe everything that's not physical. So it
Mm.
includes our mind, it includes our imagination, it includes our dreams, it includes our feelings, because they're like, where are they? They're sort of in the body, but they're also out here. And it's where memories are stored. So memories are malleable.
Mm.
And the new research on memory reconsolidation says that we can go back and undo memories, change them and redo them, reconsolidate them. So when I discovered that, I went, oh, yeah, that's what we've been doing for 20 years.
Yeah, right? Yes.
um, and I talked to Bruce Ecker, who created it, and
Mhm.
said, "This is what I do." And he went, "Yeah, I get it. You're doing the same thing." So, uh, so that's so we're working with the memory system, and to the brain. The brain doesn't make a big difference between what's imagined and what's real. This is why you can practice in your mind and actually get better at something,
Yeah.
because the brain is like, the brain has eyeballs and ears and things, but what's happening inside the brain is what's happening, including in imagination. So we can go back and actually change history. We can change what happened in memory, because we're carrying that with us, right? It's the
Yes.
past is gone, but we're carrying it all with us. So that's the mechanism we use to go back into the psyche, to the core of the psyche, and make shifts there, because then you had a different history. Something else happened. My favorite saying is, it's never too late to have a happy childhood,
I love
because
that.
we can go back and actually change what happened.
That is so cool. That's a great statement. You have like great things that you say. There's this quote that I've always loved, and it reminds me of what you're saying. You've probably heard it. Alvin Toffler, he says, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write. It will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and learn again. And it just reminds me of what you're describing. They thought he was such a kook when he wrote about stuff, and then it all was real.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
he, so does that sound similar to you? It's like that.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. The unlearning process is, so most people think of the past as fixed, right?
Yes.
What
Mhm.
happened, that happened, and that's what happened, and I
Yes.
just have to get used to it or adjust to it. Even with traumas, we can go back and actually heal traumas, because
Yes.
traumas are just in memory, and we can
Yes.
go back and change memory, and therefore we can have a different experience in the past. And when you do that, that change echoes through to the present,
Yes.
because that child, instead of being in the middle of being beaten, is now playing in a forest and wasn't beaten. So that
Yes.
our inner children get stuck in those traumatic experiences, but we can go back and relocate them. I used to call it relocating the inner child, taking them and moving them in space. I was working with a client this past week, and she said, I said, "Are you in touch with your inner child?" She said, "Yeah, I'm very much in touch with her." And I said, "Well, where do you meet her?" She said, "Well, I have her on my knee and I'm holding her." And I said, "Well, but what's the surroundings?" And she said, "It's just kind of dark." And I said, "Well, let's bring her into the light." Right. And we
Yes.
relocated, we took her and made her, and had her beautiful house in a forest. And suddenly she brightened up. Right. So inside this client, her inner child went from being comforted to being her bright golden self.
I love that.
That shifted her significantly. It was just like a big shift that happened very quickly.
I feel like in this field, I've been in this field for 30 years, right? Most of my adult life. And I've watched this idea that, you have to feel your feelings and you go back, but it's kind of like, and it's almost like bad to say, but it's like, it becomes almost like people are supporting this idea of comforting this child who is a victim or who was traumatized and never understanding that, like what you're saying, that it's not, that it's like, I will say to myself or to people, like, that isn't happening now. It's like, that's part of it. Like, but I love that. And I've gotten that message like 3 times this week about changing the memory. It's so weird. So I guess I got to go in and change a couple of memories or whatever. I just, tell us anything that you want to say, because you are truly such a pleasure. You're so intelligent. I'm so honored to have you here. And I'm not just like, what do I say to women, blowing wind up your skirt. Like, I really mean it. Like, I feel like very moved by this conversation. You have so much to give. I believe you
Well,
can change the world. So,
thank you. Thank you. I'm
yeah.
trying. I'm doing my
Yes.
best. As
Yes.
my teacher used to say, "Aw, shucks, I didn't think you'd notice."
Right. Yeah.
False humility.
Mhm.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. What I want to communicate, especially to your audience who's psychologically sophisticated, is that whatever's going on at the surface of your life has a cause. And that cause is down there in the subconscious belief matrix. And it can be changed. If you don't like what's happening in your relationship, go investigate your beliefs about relationship and your history, and go deep. If you don't like what's happening in your money and finance arena, go deep and find out what's happening there in the belief structure. If you don't like your work or your career, go find out where it got started, because everything starts there. That's the causal matrix. It causes our experience. So if you can make changes there, your life can change, and it can change rapidly, profoundly, and permanently.
I love that. It's really, really cool, because it's like when we end up looking there to try to fix them instead of changing us. I mean, I'm always talking about that. I love this. So thank you so much for being here. Tell everyone where they can find you, and I'm going to find you because I need your shit. I need help. This is
Well,
my crazy household that I grew up in. But yeah, so
uh,
tell everybody where they can find you.
good. So if you want to read my story about my near-death experience, that's at liongoodman.com. Lots of resources there. If you're interested in my training, the Clear Beliefs Coach Training, clearbeliefs.com. And then we have a coaching program for people who just want to get their beliefs cleared, and that's clearyourbeliefs.com. So I suffer from multiple website disorder.
Oh my God, yes. Thank you so, so much. I
Thank
am
you, Allison.
honored to know you now.
I look forward to more.
Yes, me too. Bless you. It's air up. Hey, guys. This is a post video in regard to Lion Goodman's podcast. I am blown away by his work and his story, and so much about what he presented in this podcast. It is truly a life-changing experience. I was supernaturally, spiritually moved just by, having the interaction with him. I could feel the just the power of his work. So what I wanted to throw out to you guys, I'm always talking about core beliefs and changing our blueprint, and that we have this neurological structure, and that we have to go inward and work on our internal locus of control. And I tell the story about the man who lost his keys. It was a blackout, and he's in his living room and he loses his keys. And he starts looking all around, and then he sees a light outside. And then he goes outside because the street lights are on. And he starts looking around for his keys. And his neighbor comes and says, "Hey, buddy, what are you looking for?" And he says, "I lost my keys." And the man says, where did you lose them? And he said, I lost them inside my house in my living room. And the neighbor says, how come you're looking out here? And he says, because there's light out here. And what we tend to do as human beings is we tend to try to solve an internal, emotional, spiritual, neurological, bodily, memory, experiential issue with an external solution. We try to change our behavior, or we try to change other people, places, and things. And we tinker around outside in order to make an internal change. And the whole message that Lion Goodman talks about is the importance of going inward and going to your unconscious, subconscious mind, that part of you that has all this stored memory that is dictating every part of your life. I talk about that on a different, in a different way in my book, but more and more people are raising up and showing us that there's hope, that we can change our memories and our beliefs in order to become exactly who we're meant to be, to find our greatness, to create a magnificent life of just majesty, what we've really been created for. So I just want to encourage you guys to listen to him, to follow him, subscribe to anything he has. He's just really, he sums up so much of what I've been talking about for years, but he has this multidimensional approach, and I just love it. And also, I just want to encourage you guys to really go inward and stop trying to change people and stop being so impacted by external things. I know we cannot help it, because when we're feeling badly, like Lion talks about in this podcast, he says that if you don't like your relationship, go inward and find out what you believe about relationships. I love that. If you don't like your money situation, go inward and find out about your money beliefs. And this is the new awakening. This is what is raising up for people to understand. This is the real path to healing. And there'll be naysayers that say you have to do the work. And yes, that's true. The work being, who is to say that the work is not the going inward? How come, when we call work, it's like, because it's harder to do, to stop. It's easier to go put in action to something. Well, maybe not for some, but to go and externally, now I'm going to focus on you and change you so my life can change. It's a futile effort. But there is also, when we do the transformation on the inside, then the external work, the actionable steps that we will take. This is not a lazy approach, but those actionable steps will be the steps that will make incredible difference, because it's not a grinding of the gears. It's a smooth transition into the actionable steps, because it's backed by a belief system that's unconscious. So please, please, please listen to this podcast. I just love it. And I do ask, please, guys, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I never promote that thing. And I really could use some subscribers on there. It would really make a difference. We have our podcast everywhere, but I haven't really, if you want to see us in real time, see what we look like as we're talking, check out the YouTube channel. It's not so spruced up, but we could really use some subscribers there. Okay, be blessed. And I just look forward to our next time together.